and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation with a changemaker working to accelerate the transition to a sustainable carbon-neutral society. I'm your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Today, we're going to talk about e-waste. E-waste recycling, as we've discussed many times, falls woefully short of the necessary levels to reduce the need to mine and produce new raw materials to make computers, phones, refrigerators, all the stuff that we have come to count on in our modern era. It produces toxins, it destroys natural habitats. We need to reduce our mining and use all of the materials that we've taken out of the ground already. Our guest today is John Shegerian. He's co-founder, chairman, and CEO of ERI, which is a Fresno, California-based e-waste recycler that has 8 U.S. processing locations and serves every zip code in the country. It has partnerships with recycling companies in 40 countries around the world as well. ERI has established recovery partnerships with aluminum maker Alcoa, South Korea's LSNC, which is the second largest copper and precious metal smelting operation in the world, as well as Redwood Materials, Tesla co-founder J.B. Straubel's lithium-ion battery and solar panel company. Each of these companies has a member sitting on ERI's board of directors, so there's a very tight integration between the e-waste processor and the companies that are going to reuse the material that they do recycle. ERI has also introduced what it calls the most comprehensive e-waste tracking platform to enable full transparency about the deposition of the materials it collects. Called the ESG Impact Report and Calculator, the tool provides accountability both regarding environmental performance and the personal data on digital devices it recycles. John points out in ERI's 2020 ESG report that virtually every device that we buy today, from PCs and smartphones to video doorbells and smartwatches, can carry personal data that can fall out of our control and potentially into the hands of malicious hackers who can use it to steal our identities, launch ransomware attacks, or simply post something embarrassing on the web. We'll get an update about the state of e-waste recycling and how to protect our data when recycling a digital device in this conversation today. You can learn more about ERI at eridirect.com. ERI Direct is all one word, no space, no dash, eridirect.com. Welcome to the show, John. How are you doing today?
I'm great, and thanks for having me on today, Mitch.
Well, thank you for joining us. It's always good to have people take time to talk about recycling, particularly e-waste recycling. ERI has grown a lot since you founded the company in 2002. What have been the keys to success, and how is, in your opinion, e-waste recycling evolving as an industry?
It's been 20 short but long years, and our focus really is our customers. A lot of our competitors, unfortunately, fell by the wayside because they created what they thought were good solutions over the years, but there was a sort of a cookie-cutter solution. But what we realized is that clients really were very unique, and we had to almost create concierge services and solutions for every client, because even though Best Buy and Staples and Walmart could all be cast as a big box retailer by Jim Cramer on CNBC, they are really very unique and have their own DNA and their own way of doing business. So we created specific solutions for all our clients. And I think that led to a lot of our success. So we were very customer obsessed. We were very focused from the get-go on sustainability and innovation. And the last but not least, which we'll talk about today, hopefully more, we were focused on radical transparency with regards to our upstreams and our downstreams.
Well, actually, transparency is the thing I want to ask you about. A lot of e-waste recyclers essentially break even on the material, but make a lot of their money in destroying data that might be on digital devices. And they do it primarily for business customers. How is your focus on data security a significant differentiator? What do you do that's different?
Well, first thing is that we got certified to the best and highest standards in the industry. So, for instance, we're the only e-waste recycler on the planet that's SOC 2 certified. That's the highest standard when it comes to physical and also software solutions with regards to data security and physical security of all of our plants. So that was very unique. And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I sat down with Bob Johnson, who's the executive director and the founder of NAID, National Association of Information Destruction. He created that about 35 years ago or so, but he created it for the paper shredding industry, for data on paper. And we all have gotten used to the ubiquity of Iron Mountain and shredded trucks all around America shredding our data on paper. But Bob was so visionary. About 7 or 8 years ago, he saw the coming need to shred data in hardware, and he decided to create a new standard for shredding data in hardware, which then companies like ours in the e-waste industry could get involved with. And we did, and we got all 9 of our facilities now in the U.S. certified to NAID certifications. And again, that sets us apart because a lot of people say they're NAID certified, Mitch, but they say that on their website, but they're NAID certified in only one location, not all of their locations. So having the highest standard for every one of your locations gives a lot of peace of mind to your clients.
I think the other thing is I read about ERI that stood out for me is that you're so deeply integrated with your downstream partners, the companies that are taking the material and reusing it in various ways. Redwood Materials, for instance, being one of those examples. Why didn't everybody look at this as a vertically integrated issue? I mean, that seems like that's the way you're going.
Honestly, I ask myself the same question all the time. We made our first strategic partnership and collaboration with LS&M about in 2008. And LS&M is really owned by the Koo family out of South Korea, the founders and still the owners of LG Electronics. But it's a smelter. It's the second largest copper and precious metal smelter in the world. And they invested in us and they sat on our board, and they have done for 15 years now. And we collapsed the downstream. Our printed circuit boards are shred in our facilities, and they go directly to South Korea to LS&M. And that created this. First of all, it got rid of all the brokers in between. So we got the highest profit from that. Secondarily, it gave us great visibility to the metals and the commodity world because these folks have been around a long time and they know that industry far better than we do. And third, it created this radical transparency that none of our competitors had in terms of our downstream. Our clients now would know exactly where our materials are going because these folks own part of our company and sit on our board. That was the first. Second was Alcoa. They replicated a year later. Alcoa replicated the LS&M model. And then 2 years ago, Redwood Materials, J.B. Straubel, the co-founder of Tesla, did the same thing. He invested in us. He saw our technology, saw our operations. We had great chemistry, and he joined our board and invested in our company as well. And he gets all our lithium ion batteries and takes those to all their material resources, such as cobalt, lithium ion, nickel, copper, etc. Again, I then say to myself, this has been such a successful model and has helped us grow. When LS&M invested in us, we were doing $10 million in revenue. We're now pushing close to $200 million in revenue, and we're the largest in the industry. It's shocking, Mitch, that no one else has replicated these unique partnerships.
Another facet of this, in terms of amplifying the value of the transparency, is the ESG impact report and calculator that you launched in 2020.
Yeah.
Are your recycling customers, the people who are the companies and individuals who are recycling with you, deeply concerned about being able to report the impact of their efforts in their ESG reports, or is that something that's just they're even becoming aware of?
Yeah, a little bit of both, but it's a great question you asked. A lot of companies were into this early. The Alcoas of the world, the Best Buys of the world, and things of that such. It was a cultural and DNA issue, the Gaps of the world. But a lot of companies now realize that this ESG and this movement from a linear to circular economy are undeniable and unstoppable trends. So if they're going to act and do the right things, they want to get credit for it. They want to understand what their actions, what positive impacts their actions are having, and they want to report to their board of directors, if they're publicly traded, to the analysts on Wall Street, to their constituents, clients like you and me who buy and use their products and services. So yes, reporting and the radical transparency issue of being able to put out the impacts of their good actions has become very, very critical now. And it seems like that's going to be a trend for many, many years to come.
Let's talk a little about the supply chain you've created. One of the things that also stands out is you have all these international recycling partners all over the world. Yeah. Are they a source of material that you're processing, or are you outsourcing processing services over there? And if you do that, how do you address Basel issues, the protocol that governs the transportation of e-waste?
Right. Great. All three of those issues are intertwined and great questions. First of all, we don't cross-ship e-waste outside of the United States and across borders. So you're right. Okay. Basel's very important to us. And Jim Puckett and the great people from the Basel Action Network have done a great job of helping to police and govern this industry, which was the Wild West until Jim and other good regulators and NGOs got involved. But to your point, there's many times when we have U.S. or North American-based clients that have an issue, or they have an e-waste issue in Poland or France or Germany or China for that matter. And so we have vendors that we have chosen and audited over the years and we've personally not only audited with third parties, but also personally audited ourselves to make sure everything was kosher and good. And so we will send them our clients and our business in different parts of the world. We have about 70 partners around the world in different countries. Concurrently, those those partners also have clients in France or Germany or wherever they reside, UK, that have business in North America. And they then send that business and those clients to us to handle their North American-based e-waste problems.
So thinking about the circular economy, you have to think globally because the system is global. Yeah. And you actually built a business around the idea of e-waste being circular rather than being linear, diverted back to different industries. How has the Basel Agreement changed the industry during the time that you've been involved? And what changes do you think we need to make to continue to improve?
Well, the first thing is the U.S. never signed on to Basel.
Right.
So, and that's a political issue that's far outside of my pay grade, but it would be wonderful if they did, because that would, again, not permanently or forever eliminate the bad actors, Mitch, but it would, again, slow them down and reduce them, because they would be less loopholes for the bad actors to work within. But Basel's been great, because before Basel got, folks like Jim Puckett got involved and helped enforce the Basel, convention. What happened was, think of it as a highway, and everyone was doing 120 miles an hour, an opaque industry, not a lot of regulation, maybe none. And then Basel got passed, and then you have folks and NGOs like Basel Action Network, like the R2 organization, and other good organizations that then became cops on the side of the highway, that although some people are still speeding and some people are getting away with stuff, everyone has slowed down. Everyone has taken a harder look at their processes and procedures. And there's been a lot more rationality brought to an industry that needed governing, that needed more rationality and rules around it, so people would do things the right way, or at least make a massive effort to be responsible about what they did.
So let's talk about that industry, because I don't think people really comprehend exactly how much value they are tossing into landfills every year in terms of precious metals and other elements that are in digital devices. How much value is going into landfills that could be processed as e-waste?
Well, according to the UN, this is not my own number, but these are UN statistics that I'm quoting. Over $50 billion of value is discarded annually in landfills around the world. But that ties back to the UN's other stat, Mitch, and this is about 5 years old, these stats, so I don't want to claim that they were from yesterday, but the UN stats on responsible recycling of electronics internationally is only 17%. So there's an 83% gap and opportunity in Delta for new entrepreneurs and all of us as stakeholders to help make an impact and help get those numbers higher, because we're not doing a good enough job as consumers, as retailers, as manufacturers, and as government entities. We can all do so much more.
So using the numbers the UN provides, you're saying basically there's $42 billion or so just being wasted.
Just being wasted, because you're so right. Now let me just even make it even clearer to what you're saying. You're so right. If last month we recycled at ERI in our 9 facilities, give or take about 20 million pounds of electronic waste. Here's the great story of all responsible e-waste recyclers, not just ERI. This is not a commercial for ERI. This is for all responsible e-waste recyclers around the world. When done responsibly and correctly, Mitch, it's zero waste, zero landfill, zero emission. So out of that 20 million pounds, either the products that by contract that they were allowed to be retested and their data to be wiped and and to be repackaged and resold, that's one division of e-waste and responsible recycling. The other is the shredding element, where the electronics are commoditized through our shredders. At ERI, it's our proprietary shredders, but in other companies, they either hand dismantle it or they have their own proprietary shredders. Mm-hmm. And then all the materials out of that shredding process, and in pretty much in order of volume, it goes like steel, it goes plastic, and then it goes aluminum, copper, and then the precious metals, copper, gold, gold, silver, lead, palladium. All those materials at ERI and the other responsible recyclers around the world go back to smelters for beneficial reuse. So nothing goes to a landfill. It's maybe one of the greatest untold circular economy stories out there. And we're letting this stuff go into landfill still or through our hands. And it makes no sense whatsoever.
So I've seen some data that says that we actually fell backward during the pandemic in the United States, and overall globally that we might be down to 15%. But the EU has a 42% e-waste recycling rate. Does the US, or do we need this at the global level, an e-waste deposit system to recover, to encourage the recovery of electronics? I mean, a phone is worth $35, $40 in terms of materials. People don't know that, but what if they could just collect the phone and get paid to hand the phone over to somebody else based on a deposit? Would that help?
Yep, I think that would help. But I look back, because I've been forced to travel because of this industry and learn what other technologies are out there and meet clients in other parts of the world. What I've learned is a little bit more social and cultural, Mitch, rather than regulations. What I've learned is this, over the last 20 years, Germany, France, UK, even Japan, South Korea were far ahead of us on all circular economy and sustainability issues, typically because they were forced to be. Size-wise, they're small countries geographically. So opposed to our thinking of we live in America, the land of the big and the free, they couldn't just take their waste on a linear basis and throw it into a landfill. So in the 30s and 40s, they had to start thinking much more circular, much more sustainably. And so from a cultural and a DNA perspective, those generations, they're about 2 generations ahead of us in terms of how they handle their waste and how they think about the environment and how they think about the circularity of the entire planet, that really environmental harms have no borders. If a tragedy, an environmental tragedy happens in Japan or China, we're affected in the United States and also in Europe. We have to all just be better stewards. So I think the issue is, yes, government could do and should do more, to your point, Mitch, but I think all of us could do more as just stakeholders, because we're all enjoying the benefit of the technological revolution. So we can all just do a little bit more to actually support the circularity of recycling these materials when they come to their end of life.
It's interesting. Essentially, what you're saying is the United States takes pride in the fact that we throw stuff away, and that has been part of our culture, and we need to change that, which is so true. I want to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come right back and continue the conversation. We're back to continue talking with John Shegerian. He's the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of ERI, a Fresno, California-based e-waste recycler with partnerships all over the world. John, I want to, you've talked a lot about the importance of data security in terms of the value it's created for the company, but what do consumers need to know about recycling their devices? What are the steps you recommend they take before they send a device for recycling?
Yeah, that's really important because, as you say, Mitch, consumers themselves are a lot of people. According to the EPA, we all have about 23 extra devices in our homes and offices, attics, garages stored away. And a lot of that isn't because we're storing it away to take up extra space in our places, but we're just also, we don't know what to do with our old electronics now that they've come to their end of life because we're worried about the data. And so a couple of things to know. Staples and Best Buy have been way ahead of this. And they only use responsible and certified recyclers in their programs. So they're very safe, including Salvation Army. Very safe to either donate or drop off or give your old electronics to. Now, if you are interested in sort of one of these trade out programs where you can trade in your old device and get some credit for it, you then have to ask whatever retailer or whatever organization you're working with, who gets that phone or tablet or device you're trading in to get a new device from. They have to be transparent with the consumer. And if they're not transparent or they just plain don't know, I wouldn't turn my phones or my old electronics over to them. So transparency from the retailer. I'd also be super careful about putting any of your devices up on eBay or Craigslist or any of those other wonderful platforms that when you don't have data, if you're selling furniture or something else, no problem. But if it's a data containing device, I'd be super careful. Even if you thought you cleaned the data off your own device, there's been studies done by NAID has done studies that have shown that people who have thought to have cleaned their own devices or given it to a recycler who said they were going to, but really weren't certified, those devices end up on the market and typically have at least 50% of the time have their personal identifying information on it. And that, if gotten into the wrong hands, that could be semi-catastrophic for a family or for an organization.
So what are some surprising examples of data being collected that people might not be aware of by the devices in their home?
Okay, a couple of great ones is a copier machine or a fax machine. A copier machine or fax machine seem very benign as they sit in your home or office, but they do have hard drives. And those hard drives literally keep a copy of every copy that's ever gone through that machine or fax. And so if you get rid of a copier or fax machine and it gets into the wrong people's hands, again, that's a big no-no. You don't want to irresponsibly, even benignly get rid of a fax machine or a copying machine and let it go potentially into the wrong folks' hands. Another example is now rent-a-cars. Most rent-a-cars, when you fly into a city or go to another city and you're getting into a rent-a-car, are now pretty modern, and they have hard drives in them. So now you're fidgeting as you're either trying to find the location you're going to, or play some of your favorite music off of your tablet or your cell phone.
Oh, I see.
And you're pressing some of the buttons that the car is asking you for. They're asking you to opt into this and that, and you're driving and now you're semi-distracted from everything you're doing. So you're just opting into everything. And by the time you return that car, in many, many instances, I would say over 50% of the instances, you've inadvertently downloaded all of the information from either your tablet or your cell phone into the hard drive of that car. And now that car now has your banking information, your social, and your business and your personal contacts.
Well, there's no factory reset for that car either. You can't clear that cache.
Right. So it's a big problem.
Wow.
Many of the rent-a-car agencies have become clients of ours because of this, and also car manufacturers who are getting back cars on leases that are full of other people's information. So again, these are the ubiquity of electronics, Mitch, over the last 30 years has been wonderful and has made our lives so much more interesting and interconnected for so many reasons. But the dangers that lurk within these devices, if not properly disposed of when they come to their end of life or the end of their lease life, could be just really, really bad. And so people just have to think. Also, wearables. Think about your Oura Ring. Think about your Garmin watch. Think about the stuff that you have in your house now, your Nest and your Ring. This stuff all is collecting lots of data on us. Just be responsible when you get rid of all these materials to protect yourself and your family.
Now, let's turn to the way that the largest manufacturers, electronics manufacturers, are currently recycling. Just as disclosure, folks, I've worked for two of the companies that I'm going to name and covered Apple as a journalist for many years. So Apple, Samsung, and Microsoft, among others, do collect more devices today, but they tend to scrap it all and then buy and send to somebody else to scrap. And then they buy the raw materials back. Why, John, aren't they thinking about really closed loop circularity? Or is that simply impractical for a company like an Apple or a Samsung?
It's a great question, and we have many OEMs, and those are great brands that you mentioned, and
they genuinely care. Let me say, from the inside, I know that.
Right, and they care. I mean, because listen, the people that run all those organizations you just mentioned, and all the other OEMs for that matter, are people like you and me, Mitch. And there's nobody that I've ever met in my travels or you've met that don't want themselves and their children and their grandchildren to breathe cleaner air and drink cleaner water. We're all for the environment, no matter what our political bents are, and no matter where we grew up and things of that such. Everyone wants the right thing for the environment to happen. So I think when they first started doing their business and built their fortunes, they were in the business of making cool, innovative products. I think as time has evolved and times have changed, and younger consumers have come on board and are voting with their pocketbook, wanting materials now, wanting new items made sustainably or out of more recycled materials. I think OEMs are taking a very hard look at that. And I'll give you a couple of clear examples. Just in the last 3 weeks, we've had 5 OEMs come to visit us at ERI, big names. And what they come now with, this is their first mission. They bring their engineers now. The guys that are actually the men and the women that are super brilliant people that are creating these new products 2, 3 years, 4 years out. And they're seeing what's difficult. Where are the friction points in recycling in our facilities, which they've never done before in all of our 20 years. And how can we make our products, as you said, not only out of more sustainably sourced materials, such as our recycled commodities, but how can they just functionally make them easier to recycle? And so I think that trend has started, and I think that trend is going to be part of the future. So I think I'm very hopeful for where we're going with the trends of the OEMs being very interested in design for sustainability and the circular economy.
Well, if you do these closed loops, particularly more regionally, you reduce shipping and other emissions related to just moving the material around for processing. Do you see prospects for creating regional closed loop e-waste recycling systems improving? And obviously, with your locations all over the country, are you thinking about how to facilitate those?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a great point. As everyone is thinking about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 and emissions from not only how you manufacture these materials and how you recycle them, they're now thinking about, as you said, how you transport them when they're either, brand new going to be sold or after they're used going to recycling. So yes, I think all waste should be handled locally. It's a local industry. And to think that, for instance, we never dreamed, Mitch, when we started this business, I'd be totally fibbing to you to say, hey, when we started this business, we thought we'd have 9 locations. Honestly, we thought we'd have one big location in California, have a nice California-based business, and go from there. But because we realize our clients are national and many of them are international, they need solutions wherever they are. And it's usually typically a 300 to 500 mile radius. So we build our facilities when you lay over and you draw a concentric circle around all of our facilities. Typically, it would show that we cover every zip code in the United States. We also cover Alaska and Hawaii, but those are a little bit more unique and anomalies. But to your point, yes, recycling is going to get more local, and it's only right that it does so, because it's just better business that you recycle what's used within a 300 to 500 mile radius from the points of use.
So what are some of the most effective ways to reduce the emissions and waste and even water consumption associated with recycling? Do you have suggestions the industry should be considering?
Yeah, it's all the stuff that we've been hearing about. And the nice thing about e-waste recycling is we don't use water, so that's good. And there's no runoff and there's no water concerns at our facilities. Emissions from our suppliers, we're now looking very hard at Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions ourselves. We're not only externally focused on helping our clients achieve their goals, we are also internally focused to be a better company and continually improve ourselves all the time. So, challenging our suppliers, challenging our own energy usage at our facilities, and also fleet and route optimization. We're using more and more AI and technologies such as that have popped up during the advent of our company to better utilize our routes and our fleet. So this way we cut down on our own fleet emissions and our route structures. So yes, every one of us can be better in terms of how we treat our organizations and how we treat the environment. And I think it's really important to keep that in mind. So I really appreciate that question.
Well, now you reported your Scope 1 and 2 emissions for the first time in 2020 and have a commitment to reach zero emissions by 2030. How's that going? Where are you on the path?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that. We're just finishing up our 2021 book, and it's going positively. It hasn't been announced yet, but I'll share it with you. We're really proud of this. The very famous and world-known Ellen MacArthur Foundation last year when we submitted, and it's all done actually privately, not so people don't get embarrassed, and people are more encouraged to report what they're doing and learn where they are from a grading basis. Last year, when we provided all our materials to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on where we were, we got an A-. So we were very proud of that, and I really have to say that. But again, we want to always be continually improving. There's no perfect people. There's no perfect organizations. And so this year, we just got notice last Friday that this year we earned an A. And so we're definitely making progress. Are we perfect yet? No. Can we be better yet next year? Heck yes. But when you have a third party that's so well revered around the world, and they're very careful on how they consider these things, and they're looking over your shoulder and helping coach you to do better, I think it's a good practice, because it's better than just looking in the mirror and thinking to yourself, hey, I look better today. I think we're doing better. I think it's good to have third parties, trusting, but also verifying what you're doing. So that way you're forced to improve and you're continually being self-reflective.
So do I hear you saying that you are confident you'll make your 2030 goal?
I feel very confident we will. Yes, very, very confident.
Now, we talked about the role retailers play in the market earlier, particularly Staples and Office Depot, who have done a great job. Best Buy, excuse me. And Office Depot is in our database too. What we find in a lot of conversations across all sorts of industries is the retailer really has the most leverage of all, because they place the big orders.
Yep.
How do you suggest retailers think about their relationship with the recycling system? Because their entire business is about bringing stuff in the back and having it go out the front door with the customer. They have to start thinking the other way too. What should they be doing? Well,
the two best models that are out there today are the Best Buy and Staples models. But, we're very involved with them. We help create the Best Buy model. And here's the funny little thing that's not advertised a lot. So Best Buy, they like you said, they gave up some of their golden space, as you said, and people thought they were nuts. It was never going to work. We beta tested it with only 10 stores in California, Mitch, and then 20 stores. And eventually every store in America had a box that would take back old consumer retailer electronics. Mm-hmm. But what they realized, it was great business because you have millions of people dropping off old electronics at a Best Buy store, and a great percentage of them, not 100%, but a great percentage of them, after they drop off the old electronic, go into the store and buy something new for themselves or their family or friends. So it's a great business model, and it keeps people sticky to their brand. So I wish that every retailer in America would have some form of box or take back program. It would make their clients stickier to them, and it would give more opportunity and convenience to recycle. Because one of the hitches when you poll people, why don't they recycle more? It sometimes comes down to just a pure convenience issue.
Yeah. Well, and the research shows that if you can do more than one recycling task at a location, that you're more likely to recycle overall.
Right.
And so it's so important that we think about this. And so that you can imagine a retailer sort of being a bi-directional channel rather than just a selling channel.
100%. And let me just say this, even Amazon, is bi-directional, that they have consumer takebacks. They don't have physical stores as like Best Buy does, but they'll take back damaged or other products, and they also then have to responsibly recycle those as well. So all the retailers are getting involved in one way, shape, or form. And I think there's going to be, as you point out, a bilateral approach to this, and it's going to keep growing, which is only going to benefit all of us.
Well, yeah. In fact, Kohl's is where a lot of the Amazon take-back happens, and
Right.
they have benefited exactly as you described, with people coming into the store and shopping while they're dropping stuff off.
Exactly right.
It's going to be a new world, and one where a lot of the waste that we're talking about will, 20 years from now, we'll think, what the hell were people thinking? How can folks learn more about ERI or contact you to get e-waste services?
Yeah. Our website's easy. It's eridirect.com, eridirect.com. And Mitch, let me just offer this. There's two things I want to offer. If any of your listeners want to write to you, because this is your show, and they want to request a copy of two things from us. A, our ESG book, so they can actually see how we report on our goals and what we're achieving here. I'm happy to send that book to any one of your listeners. But more important, we also wrote a book during the pandemic called The Insecurity of Everything. My partners and co-founders wrote this book, and we didn't write it to be Shakespeare. We didn't write it to actually make money. We wrote it as an education tool so people can protect themselves, their families, and their organizations. And anyone who writes to you and says they want a copy of this book, we will send them a free copy of The Insecurity of Everything.
That's great. We'll include a link in the story that goes with the podcast so that people can find it as well. John, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Totally an honor and privilege. And Mitch, thank you for the great work that you're doing and continued success.
Thank you. We've been talking with John Shegerian. He's the CEO of Ewaste Recycler, ERI, and you can learn more about ERI at eridirect.com. ERI Direct is all one word, no space, no dash. We'll also include links to the company's ESG report and the book, The Insecurity of Everything, in the article that accompanies this podcast on Earth911.com. We've heard an encouraging report about the potential to radically improve e-waste recycling, to take it from today's 15 or 17% globally to 50, 60, 70, 80, and someday maybe 100%. And we also heard there's growing recognition of the business opportunity in reducing waste. John's point about many parts of the world being ahead of our e-waste and recycling performance overall being the result of their recognition decades ago that resources are inherently scarce is an important one to keep in mind. Here in the United States, waste has become a sign of prosperity, but we're literally throwing away our future when we toss something away casually after using it once, twice, or even after using it 20 years without taking the time to recycle it. So learn about your e-waste recycling options and how to check out that your personal data will be handled and destroyed responsibly. That'll help build confidence in recycling on your part and in your friends and family. Because skepticism, we find here at Earth911, is one of the greatest barriers to the success of recycling. It really is a matter of deciding to participate safely and responsibly in the recycling process. Each of us is the first step in recycling. And if we don't act, no one will be able to recover those materials without us. So learn and take the time to do your recycling whenever you can. It'll improve the condition of our environment over the coming decades. And, our children and grandchildren will thank us. I hope you take a moment to share this show, too, with all your friends, family, your coworkers. Let's get more ideas out there so that we can create a less wasteful world. We hope that you'll also share this, amplify this story with your friends and family. Tell them that Sustainability in Your Ear is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, and any of the other places they might be looking for their podcasts. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe with Earth911. We're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, folks, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.